For both iOS and Android devices, Horror Amino is a one-stop shop for your frightful pleasures. Create an account today and take in and share endless amounts of horror videos, top lists, chats, challenges, and even real-time polls, allowing your favorite content creators, like myself, to hear your voice directly by voting on what you want to see in the next video. Amino Horror is the only and most easily accessible horror social network to date. Download links for both Android and iOS will be on screen and in the description below, and I encourage everyone to come follow me as we embark upon the next big step in growing this awesome community with Horror Amino. Demon by Grandma's Terrace. It all happened about a month ago in a small village in Turkey. I'm a 15-year-old boy, and I was on vacation in Turkey to meet my grandparents. I was sitting on the terrace at our house with my uncle. It was about midnight. We were just sitting there and talking. Then he went in to eat. I was just sitting there and was texting with my friends on my phone. Suddenly, I felt uncomfortable. I looked up from my phone, and there it was, approximately 4 to 5 meters away. It was a little demon, I think. It was watching my grandma sleeping, and it was on the other side of the terrace. It was blurry to start with, and I didn't know what it was. I quickly took a picture of it with my phone. The first picture was blurred. Then I took another picture, and I was scared to death when I saw it. I looked up again, and it was gone. I still have the picture on my phone. It was about half a meter tall, had white fur all over the body, and a tail that looked reptilian without the fur. It had long pointed fingers, a brown head, and instead of feet it had hooves, and its back legs were like the back legs of a goat. I still have nightmares about it. Anything Goes Demon. I have an alarming and unusual story. I have always been sensitive to energies and spirits, but I have never experienced anything like what I experienced for the past year and a half. When it started, I thought it was a ghost in my old apartment. Things would happen at night while I was sleeping. Things I could not explain. I would feel extremely hot along my entire back, as if I had my back against a fireplace. So hot the feeling would wake me up. I felt static along my arms. The little hairs on my arms would just stand up. I would sometimes wake up to having my feet hanging off the edge of the foot of my bed, as if something had pulled me. I also felt a presence always standing over me on my side of the bed. I say my side because my boyfriend has always slept on the left and me on the right. Then, we moved into another apartment, and for the first few months, everything was normal. I was convinced that the unexplainable things which had happened to me at night were from a ghost who seemed to have stayed at the old apartment. To my surprise, things began to happen again. The same things and more. This ghost had followed me and was getting comfortable. Now I was having nightmares. I was scared to fall asleep due to the unknown. Actually, this ghost was making itself known. It wanted me to know it was there by bumping the bed, waking me up from my sleep, and crawling on the bed. Some of these events happen while in a state of being half asleep and half awake, sometimes fully awake. I constantly felt this thing watching me, and I was afraid. My boyfriend never noticed any of these happenings until the other night I woke him up after this thing bumped the bed. He awoke to console me as usual. I then got out of bed to use the restroom. While I was gone, this thing bumped the bed again, and my boyfriend thought it was me, and when he looked around, there was no one there. This was the only instance in which he had actually witnessed what I have been experiencing. I shared my story to a demonologist who explained that it was not a ghost. This was an incubus or succubus, and it was preparing itself for a sexual attack on me. He gave me some advice to visit a priest, confessing and bringing home some holy water to sprinkle on my bed. I did it as he advised, and for a few days I slept well, rosary in hand. Although I continued to feel its presence in my apartment, and I would still see the shadow, only it kept its distance from me. After speaking with the priest and this demonologist, it became apparent to me that this demon was also attacking my boyfriend while sleeping. I was more and more convinced that this incubus or succubus was with him, and now bothering me, so therefore somewhat jealous of me. When I distanced myself from my boyfriend, it left me alone. Then last night, it came to me and seduced me in my sleep. I feel guilty because in my dream I remember knowing what this was, and then giving in to its touch. Could this be the same demon wanting us both, or is it now two different demons? And another thing had me stumped, is that the whole time I had my rosary in hand, and this demon did not care. The Beggar. My name is Valia. I'm an engineer and a very scientific person. I analyze everything and try not to give in to believing in paranormal stories. Although I have always been absurdly fascinated by the stuff, I work in a large city where there is a large population of homeless folk wandering about. They all seem to have their own territories as well, and I can recognize them just because they dwell in the same areas all the time. A few weeks ago, I was walking down my usual street to get my car out of the garage. I was walking along and noticed a homeless man sitting on a bench-like thing outside the garage. I had never seen him before, as he wasn't a regular on this particular block. As I passed, he implored, "Please, spare me some change. Anything will help." I was thinking about offering him some change, but then realized that all I had were some larger bills and some change buried in my briefcase somewhere. I kept walking, pretending not to hear the man. I felt a pang of remorse as I passed him, but continued. He continued to beg, and then as I sauntered away from him, he said, "Please spare some change. Please, Valia." I immediately turned around, as most people naturally would upon hearing their name, and was met with this homeless man's strange, penetrating stare. I was in utter disbelief that the man knew my name, being that I was not wearing my name tag and had never met him before. There was no logical explanation for it. When I looked back at him, his eyes were black, bottomless, and almost hypnotic. His stare was truly unearthly and vexing. It wasn't evil, but it was powerful, and I had chills running up and down my spine. I truly felt that I knew this person, or creature, or that he or it knew me very well. He continued to stare at me, and he actually stopped begging as other people passed by, which was unusual, as I kept walking, looking at him out of the corner of my eye. I was so unbelievably frightened and speechless. I have no idea what it was or who it was, and why it called my name and no one else's. I have never seen that man again on the street. Aliens and Demon Terror. I'm a 32-year-old active-duty U.S. Army soldier. These events all started when I was about 13 years old till present day. I had been living in Shreveport, Louisiana, with my mom, dad, and 3 older brothers at the time. Growing up, we didn't have much money, and our house was a small 3-bedroom, one in which I shared with my older brother, 1-bathroom home. All my life I felt as if I was an outcast or somehow different. I hardly fit in with crowds and didn't have many friends. My oldest brother and I shared a bunk bed, and I slept on the bottom bunk. On one school night, early morning, our room was dark with only the light from our bathroom illuminating from the cracked door. Around 3:30 a.m., I woke up, having a strange feeling overcome my body, the feeling as if somebody was staring at me. I felt completely paralyzed and could not budge or make a sound. Seconds went by, and I managed to turn my head to the left just enough to get a glimpse at something I will never forget. There, right in front of my bed, stood 5 beings, motionless. 4 of these creatures resembled the usual alien greys of some sort. They were grayish, with large heads, about 4 feet tall, with long, slender bodies and hands. But the 5th creature was the one that stood out the most. He stood about 8 feet tall. His eyes were oval-shaped, and even though it was dark in our room, I could still see his eyes pulsating red. It seemed like it was staring right through me. For some reason, I felt as if though he was evil and also their leader. His flesh was also not like the others. It was a brownish color, and his face looked like a hooded skeleton. I don't remember them moving at all, just staring at me and preventing me from moving. They never made a sound. Then all of a sudden, I managed to shout to my mom for help. They quickly disappeared. I looked up to see my brother still sound asleep, then ran to my mom's room to tell her, and as I predicted, she didn't believe me. My next experience is what made me a true believer in the paranormal. My episodes continued on and off throughout my teenage years, no matter where we moved. It was now 1994, and I was around 17 years old. At this stage in my life, it got to the point where I knew my sleep paralysis would happen before it actually occurred, given certain signs. Either I'd feel a vibrating sensation in my chest area, or upon waking up, I wouldn't be able to open my eyes. We had now moved out of that house and into a fairly larger one. All of my brothers had moved out or married, living on their own, except for me. One night around 11 p.m., I was beginning to feel that oh-so-familiar feeling again. But this time it would be far worse than I had ever experienced. The hour was around 11 p.m. My father and I were home. My mom had left for work earlier that evening. I was to be at work at 12 a.m. and had just finished ironing my work uniform. Feeling kind of tired, I decided to take a quick nap. And keep in mind that my bathroom was right outside my bedroom door. As soon as I closed my eyes, I felt those feelings run through my chest and overcome my body. Not yet asleep, I quickly tried to open my eyes and spring back up, but it was too late. I'd been paralyzed and could not move or talk. I did my usual routine, trying to fight it off by chanting the Lord's name, but this time it had no effect. I felt helpless. All of a sudden, I started to hear a sound like somebody was talking in some unknown language. I couldn't make out what it was trying to say, but for some strange reason it reminded me of one of those old Space Invader video games by Atari. To make matters worse, it seemed to hate the fact that I chanted the Lord's name. I started to hear a loud buzzing sound, and all of a sudden I felt the most horrific pain I have ever felt in my life. It was like somebody had plunged an electric voltage regulator of some sort directly into my brain, and every time I would attempt to make a sound or move, it would activate the power switch. The pain was intense, almost unbearable. Also, as I said before, I was never asleep, so this wasn't a dream. Eventually, after what seemed like a small eternity, it finally gave in and allowed me to open my eyes just in time to catch a glimpse of a figure. It looked to me like a wrinkly old troll. It was dressed in all black, with long stringy black hair and huge red glowing eyes. I got a strong feeling that it was a female. I watched the shadowy figure hover over my bed for a few seconds and then vanish without a trace. A minute or two passed, and I started to regain my composure. It was hard to believe that only 10 minutes had passed throughout the entire session. Still shaking, I decided to get dressed for work and get the heck out of that house. As I walked out of the house, I passed my dad watching TV and told him what happened. I always felt that he was the one that always believed me. He asked me if I was okay, and I said, "Yeah, I guess so." Then I headed off to work. Now here's the part that terrifies me when I think about it. The next morning I arrived home around 4:30 a.m. To my surprise, my dad was wide awake, sitting on the couch with the TV off. I asked him why he was up so early, staring at the wall. He said, "After you left for work, what time did your friend leave?" I was speechless for a minute. Then I asked him, "What friend are you talking about? I haven't had any company in 2 weeks." He said, "Well, that's odd, because about 2 minutes after you left, an older woman with black hair came dashing out of your room into the bathroom and slammed the door." Then he said he had been up all night. Having a clear view of the bathroom from the living room, he said she never did come back out. After this was said, we just stared at each other, baffled with our mouths wide open. Present day, I'm now a deployed soldier serving in Iraq, and my attacks aren't as severe as they were in my teenage years. But on occasions, I still feel an evil presence.